Um, in our series, this is kind of the last one if you've watched these in order. The last thing we're going to talk about this year, maybe we shouldn't have left for last because it's one of the most important things, and you have probably heard it mentioned in every video all year long. When we started the year with your farm in a bag, or maybe you had that worksheet, we said that Iowa is known for two crops and that we grow corn and soybeans. We talked about corn. We told you that these crops have been grown in Iowa for quite a while, and many of our livestock eat them, but we haven't focused much on those soybeans. So today we're going to focus on how those grow, their life cycle, as well as a few of the products that are used once they're harvested. What can we turn those into? And most of that information is from this book, Pod to Plate. Now, this was written by the Illinois Soybean Board, but it's a great book. And Illinois is the only state who grows more soybeans than Iowa. So we're actually number 2. Illinois is number 1, our neighbors to the east. But this is an excellent book that talks about planting those soybeans all the way through harvest and using them in products. And after this book, we'll come back together and talk a little bit about that life cycle of those plants. Pod to Plate, the life cycle of soybeans. Winter in the Midwest is cold and snowy. The soil rests, waiting for spring. Soon the snow will melt, the air will warm, and it will be time to plant the soybeans. The farmer will use a tractor and planter to plant the soybean seeds. The seeds need to be planted at the right depth and spacing. Farmers use settings on the planter and computers in the tractor to plant them correctly. Soybean plants grow very quickly. In the heat of summer, they can grow an inch a day. The plants will be 3 to 4 feet tall when they are done growing. Plants need 4 things to grow: water, air, sunshine, and nutrients from the soil. In the summer, small flowers called blossoms bloom on the plants. When pollinated, these blossoms will turn into pods. A soybean plant will have 60 to 80 pods, and there will usually be 3 soybeans inside each pod. As the soybeans grow, farmers watch for pests that can hurt the plants. Insects can eat the leaves, stems, and roots. Weeds steal nutrients and water away from the soybeans. Plants can get diseases too. To keep plants healthy, farmers can use insecticides, herbicides, or fungicides to control the insects, weeds, or diseases. A healthy plant produces more soybeans. In the fall, the soybean plants are at the end of their life cycle. They turn from green to brown and the leaves fall off. The beans inside the pod begin to dry and become hard. When this happens, the soybeans are ready to harvest. Farmers use large machines called combines to cut the stems and separate the soybeans from the pods. Once the soybeans are harvested, semi-trucks or wagons take them to large grain bins that hold the beans. These bins can be on the farm or at a grain elevator. From there, the soybeans are sold to companies that will make them into things we use every day. Many of the soybeans grown in the United States are sold and exported to other countries. Trains, barges, and ships carry soybeans from where they are grown to countries all over the world. The rest of the soybeans are used here in the United States. Soybeans are usually broken apart or processed before they are used. The beans are heated and ground into soybean meal. Meal is an excellent source of protein. Soybeans are also full of useful oil. The soybean oil is squeezed out of the meal. Soybean meal is a wonderful food for farm animals. Pigs, beef and dairy cows, chickens, and even fish eat soybean meal. The protein in the soybean meal helps the animals grow and be healthy. These animals make food for you to eat like bacon, hamburgers, milk, chicken, eggs, and fish. Soybean oil, protein, flour, and lecithin are in foods that we eat every day. Soy can be found in soup, bread, yogurt, cheese, peanut butter, salad dressing, snacks, and even chocolate. You may also eat it in tofu, soy milk, soy burgers, and soy sauce. Large trucks, buses, tractors, and combines use a fuel made from soybean oil called biodiesel. Biodiesel is better for the air because it burns cleaner than regular diesel. Soybeans can also be used to make crayons, paints, and the ink used to print books and newspapers. Soybeans are renewable and environmentally friendly. Building materials like insulation, plastic, countertops, and glue can be made from soybeans. You have many products made with soybeans in your home. Lotion, makeup, pet food, and car seats are just a few of the things we make with soybeans. This family grows soybeans, and the fields surround their backyard. They take pride in growing food for other people. They work hard to protect the land and water around them for their family and yours. Okay, so in that book, they talked about the whole life cycle of that plant. They even started with what it looks like in the winter here in the Midwest. And as we moved through that book, we went through each season of that soybean growth. Now, once those seeds are planted, before we can start talking about the life cycle, there are some things that every plant has to have. So first, every plant has to have water, and you know that. So luckily, Iowa gets usually enough rain, sometimes too much. We don't like that flooding, but usually we have enough rain for our plants. We need sunshine, which Iowa also gets. This is part of the reason we grow corn and soybeans so easily, is we have a good balance of sun and rain. It doesn't get too hot here. The warmth we feel in the summer is enough to keep that corn growing really well, but it's usually not so much that that plant dies. Our plants need clean air. Okay, so we have to circulate, we aerate our soil. They all need soil. Okay, and Iowa is known for that rich soil that grows those plants really easily. And something interesting, I'm going to grab this one because we're going to come back to that soil in a second. Okay, now these are things most plants need, but especially our soybeans. If there's not enough of these elements, we add them on through fertilizer. So one thing that our soybeans need is called phosphorus, and phosphorus is represented by the letter P, and this is what helps our plants form roots. Next, plants need nitrogen, and that helps them grow. And I'm going to pull that nitrogen card also. We'll come back to those in a second. The letter K represents the word potassium, and you'll have to learn more about that in high school. But this is part of our periodic table of elements. And potassium is really good for our plants to help fight disease. So we do add that if there's not enough for our beans. And we're back to our water. Now, I pulled these two because plants need nitrogen, and that nitrogen goes into the soil. Something interesting about soybeans is that soybeans are what's called a legume. And legumes, like soybeans and peanuts, they create their own nitrogen. Okay, and so it goes into the soil, and that is transferred into the soil, and the next year it benefits the corn crop. So that's part of the reason we rotate those crops and we plant corn and then soybeans back and forth. Okay. Okay, I am in a soybean field, but if you look really closely, you can see these dried corn stalks. And that's because typically farmers rotate their crops, or that means they go every other year. So last year there was corn planted in this field, and the nutrients that are in the soil from that corn are a benefit, they're a help to these soybeans. So this year there's soybeans, and next year we'll go back and plant corn here. But you can see that there's still kind of left over, and that's a benefit to our soil. It kind of helps keep our soil in balance and prevent erosion. But this whole soybean field is growing pretty well here for June. And you should have this life cycle. So right here, you have the names of the different phases you see. You can probably guess that we do start with a seed, but I want you to go ahead And as a class, see if you can fill in that life cycle from the seed all the way to this final step when we're done harvesting. Okay, we're going to pause and give you a second to fill those in. Can you tell me when these beans were planted? About when?
Yeah, these beans were planted on April 25th. It was the last field we planted for the year of beans, and then we switched and went to, then we started planting corn.
Okay, so they were planted a little later in the season, or the latest of any of your beans. But we've talked about the life cycle of soybeans a little bit, and these are obviously germinated. They have sprouted. Do you see any pods on these quite yet?
No, there aren't any pods here. No, they won't start to set pods. Before they start to set pods, they will bloom. Like a flower blooms on soybeans, you will get it's a purple bloom that will show up on them. It'll be probably another month, and they will start to bloom, and soon after that, then that bloom will turn into a pod.
That's right. And these grow pretty quickly. They could use a little rain, it looks like. But with enough sunshine and rain, how quickly would you say these grow?
Well, these will grow. Yeah, they'll grow. Yeah, they'll grow an inch a day. They'll get up to. When we come back here in 3 weeks, they'll be knee high. And they'll soon be, and soon after that, they'll be waist high. Once they get that high, typically that's about as high as they get. Height doesn't have as much to do with how healthy the plant is as the weather. That sometimes the plant gets too tall and it puts all of its nutrients and energy into growing stock and not beans. So height doesn't always mean a good bean crop, but anyway, they'll grow pretty quickly.
Okay, so once these were planted in April, they can be sprayed, and I heard you say that you'd finished spraying this week. So here it's June 14th, so April to June. How long after you plant these do you wait to spray them?
Well, there's different ways you can do the spraying. Sometimes we spray before we plant them. This particular field we did not spray until just last week. That was the first time they'd been sprayed, and we put down things that will protect the beans from weeds, and so that they are out here growing nicely. They may not have to be sprayed with weeds again. We may spray for what they call a fungus or a fungicide, and that helps the beans stay healthy, just like you would get a vaccination for a little brother or sister. These beans will get something that will help them stay healthy through the rest of the year.
Very good. Okay, so you had a chance to fill in your life cycle. We're just going to check that with you really quick, and then we'll move on finally to a few of those products that you maybe were hearing about for the first time in our book. So we start out with a seed we're planting, and once that seed has enough water and warmth, it will germinate. So this little tail is called a germ. That's a germinated seed. Eventually, that will sprout. It turns into a growing plant, and this is about, if we start with our seed, this would be like April, still April, late April, early May, into June here. Next, we would have a flower, and those start to come out around late June, early July. Those flowers will turn into a small pod. Those pods turn into green pods. And then finally, around September, when it's time to start harvesting, those pods, the plant dies and quits growing, so it turns brown, and they dry out, and they're really hard inside that pod, and that's our brown pod. Okay? You may or may not have a few cards printed for your classroom to look at some of the different products. But some of the things I think we forget about is that our livestock are eating that soybean meal. So if we look back at our book, you know that meal is the harder part when we take the oil out. And a lot of Iowa's livestock eat that soybean meal and turn that energy into things like milk and meat that we are eating. Okay, so not just our livestock, but also things like mayonnaise and salad dressing. I heard one time that all of the oil that McDonald's fries their fries in comes from Iowa soybeans. Okay, so if you eat McDonald's fries, you've had the soybean oil. Okay, so I would encourage you to look around your house and see if you can find things that have that soybean oil in them or that lecithin. Maybe kind of a scavenger hunt to do around your house. And hopefully today you learned a little more about those beans that start to be planted in Iowa here in the spring.